Thank you very much. Hi, welcome everybody to the webinar on understanding social investment. It'd be great if you want to introduce yourselves in the chat, please do. Thanks very much for joining us this afternoon. We are going to be hearing from sort of five people. So we've got two colleagues from CAF Venturesome who will be taking our first sessions. We've got Joe, who is the Senior Development Manager at Venturesome, who will talk to us a little bit about social investment. And then we have Anne-Helene, who will, the Senior Investment Manager at Venturesome, who will talk a bit about what Venturesome's offers around social investment. We then have Kumar, who is both a consultant for Eastside, but also a social investment manager at Barrow Cadbury. So he's going to talk from a trust and foundations point of view. And then I'm going to talk about Eastside Primetimers, the services that we have and our offer. And finally, we're hoping that Peter Merrifield, Chief Exec at Support When It Matters, will join us, and he is going to take us through what it's like to be an organisation going through this process as somebody who's recently secured investment. So I'm now going to hand over, I'm quickly just going to explain. I'm sure everyone has seen that this is recording, and we will be able to share this afterwards. There is an opportunity, therefore, for you to ask questions through the session, which we will then address right at the end, and you can use the Q&A button down at the bottom of your screen where you can type the question in, and then if you click on send, it will send the question through, and then to say we'll pick them up and send them to the right people at the end. And anything that we don't get to address during the course of this webinar, then we will be able to try and respond to you afterwards. Okay, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Joe at CAF Venturesome. Thanks very much.
Thank you and good afternoon, everybody. So this is just our cover slide. So if you move on, please, Marina. Thank you. So some of you may have had some experience with social investment. Some of you may have never heard of it at all. So we're just here to explain it in plain English. So social investment is the use of money to achieve both a social and a financial return. It's important to note that it's not a standalone grant. Most of the time it's money that we need to be paid back with interest, but some social investors offer grants alongside loans, and we call that blended finance. At CAF, we use money that has been given to us by our philanthropic clients. So as that money comes into us and we lend it out, it goes round and round and round again, so that our funders can have more social impact with one pot of money than if they've just made a grant to us. Thank you, Marina. Next slide, please. So why would you consider using social investment? Why are you not just going to go out there and have a fundraiser that's putting out lots of funding proposals to grant making trusts? So this explains a little bit more about what we could do. It actually brings forward the benefits to your beneficiaries. You can have the funds to draw on while you're waiting for that promised grant or a contract, a government contract, local authority contract. You can make yourself partly self-financing, and you can make the funds go farther if you match fund it to another grant. And also it means that you can actually start your project earlier, or you can recruit that person that you need in your team earlier. And then your beneficiaries have much more of a benefit to the charitable activities of your organisation. You can start generating income from that project, and with that income you can repay your loan. And as we say, sometimes we are allowed to offer blended finance, and that helps support your growth. Next slide, please. So why, as a charity or a social enterprise, would you go to a social investor rather than the bank? Yes, we do charge a higher interest rate, but we are more flexible and we can be more patient. And most of the loans we make are unsecured, and we focus on the social impact. We can also offer support through colleagues such as Eastside with strategy and governance. And because we're a charity as well, we do understand what charities and social enterprises are doing. If you go to a high street bank, and we're going to say high street bank rather than social bank, but social banks as well, they do offer a lower interest rate, but mostly they will need to ask for something as a property and security. And they will always look at the financial return first. Next slide, please.
Yes, so thank you, Jo. So what you need to think about when you're looking to access investment. So the first thing is, what is the social impact you have and you intend to have thanks to the investment? So your impact really matters, and we'll decide, to be honest, whether we're keen to lend to your organization or not, but also the risk appetite. So if you have a really high social impact, we would be willing to maybe take a more high financial risk. Then you need to think about how much do you need. I mean, obviously at this stage, we want you to have a ballpark figure in mind. We can refine it through the due diligence process, and we can help as well to help you find co-investor. The social investment sector is very collaborative. We do a lot of co-investments. So we can help you refine this, but you still need to know roughly how much you will need, because it will also dictate who you can go to effectively, because everybody will have some kind of minimum amount and maximum amount as well. Then you really need to think about, how will you repay the social investment? It's not benevolent money, it's not a grant. You will have to pay it back, and you will have to pay it back with interest. So we need to understand, where is that money come from? It might be that it's working capital to get a grant, for instance. So you'll get that capital, but you'll have also to cover the additional cost of taking that loan. You need to have a clear plan or business model. We highlight here, like, you don't need to have a full business plan, 50-page document, etc. If you don't have one, it's fine, but your business model itself should be clear. So who are you targeting? What are your income stream? Where do you see growth, etc. And we need to understand what's your strategic direction as well. And finally, you need to look at your legal structure, because depending on the legal structure you have, you may be able to access some form of capital, but not others. And it's quite important that you understand the type of income you want to generate, the type of capital you will need to leverage, and that will influence your legal structure. So, for example, for us, we are a charity. We only hold philanthropic capital, and that means investing in strict company limited by shares is very difficult. We can do it, but under very specific circumstances. So be minded of that. But obviously, if you need to raise share on the wider markets, obviously CLS is a very good form. So you need really to think, and we've listed some example here about the type of capital you want to leverage. But within CAF Venturesome, we support CLGs, we support CICs, we support community benefit society as well. So we support a wide range of organization. But your legal structure should support your whole growth journey, not just accessing, one funder. Next slide, please. So how do you choose the right investor? So you can do the next slide as well again. So it's really thinking about a partnership, to be honest. You need to find someone who is very much value aligned to what you're trying to achieve and who understand your business model. I often do a due diligence with organization, and they're like, but actually you're more of a partner, you're not a funder, you're a partner. And it's exactly right. We're here to build a kind of long-term relationship with you. We're here to be a critical friend. We'll signpost you where we can, we'll help you, where we can in terms of financial modeling and governance, etc. So it is a long-term partnership, and you need to see that. Obviously, there are some restrictions. We all have restrictions. Some can do UK-wide, some are more regional. We have some restrictions sometimes in terms of the amount we can do, also sometimes in terms of the sector we can do. So you need to understand all this when you take a loan. What is the interest rate which is going to be charged? Is it going to be fixed or variable? Obviously, as you know, right now variable can be quite expensive with the base rate going up. You need to think about what are the other costs as well attached to the loan. Are they, commitment fees, early repayment fees, etc. But you also need to look at the benefits that a social investor is offering you. Maybe they can offer a grant alongside the loan, or maybe they can offer a lot of add-on support, or maybe they can offer some flexibility of the terms. That is, if at some point you're struggling to repay, you can easily access a kind of holiday repayment, for instance. So these are the kind of high-level consideration when looking for social investment. But I would say, there is a really good place to start if you're looking for finance, which is a good finance directory. Depending on your need, it will identify the type of social investor you can approach, or filter out the ones who would be outside of your remit. So do use it. It's a very good tool, and it's been a sector-wide effort to put this together. So make the most of it. Next slide, please.
So thank you. Can move on again. Thank you. So about CAF Venturesome, who we are the social investment team at Charities Aid Foundation, CAF, and we are unique in the UK because we use philanthropic capital to support social enterprises and charities and community groups. Now, philanthropic capital is charitable money that has been put into a charitable trust with CAF. It has crossed the tax threshold, so it's received all the benefits of tax, and so it's come back on, or the gift aid has come back, and most of our funders put it back into their trust. But that means, as Anne-Helene said, we can't lend to companies limited by shares unless there's an asset lock. But we are one of the oldest. We started in 2002, and we continue to be one of the most active social investors in the UK. And our social investment funds are designed for organisations that would find it hard to borrow from a mainstream lender or even a social bank. So here's some figures that we've done since 2002 in the last 20 years. And as at the end of 2020, which is the last data available, we are the most active social investor in our area of the market. I have to stress that we're not the most active social investor, full stop. We lend between 25,000 and 400,000. Next slide, please. So what we can offer, we at the moment have 4 funds. For early stage social enterprises, we have SE Assist Wales Fund, and that is interest-free loans with a blended finance grant, and that's to help very, very early stage social enterprises in Wales. That is open at the moment just for 1 annual funding round, and it's currently open at the moment. We also have the Social Business Impact Programme pilot, which we've just launched, and we're extremely proud of it. We are piloting this programme working with a partner called Hatch Enterprise, and that's funded by JP Morgan Chase. We're going to offer 10 blended finance packages, interest-free loans to women who, from diverse backgrounds who are leading social enterprises in Greater London. That is closed now for applications, but we're hoping that the pilot's successful and that we'll be able to open it again for applications early in the new year. Then our more growth area fund is the development fund. And I won't go through everything there, you can see it, but as I said, we offer between 25,000 and 400,000 there. It's repayable up to 10 years, and we offer interest rate of approximately 6.5%. We also have a specialist fund that is for community-led housing projects, and that can help from anything from a new build, regeneration projects, or the refurbishment of existing buildings, and that's helping communities build their own affordable homes all over the UK. Next slide, please. So why would you come and talk to us? As Anne-Helene said, we're a partner, we're a charity, and we understand the challenges that social organisations face. Because of the philanthropic capital that we have, our funders will take a higher risk with their money, balancing the high social impact. We have one of the lowest interest rates in the market currently, which will depend on your circumstances. We're flexible, and we do offer repayment holidays, and we don't charge early repayment fees. We can offer blended finance to help especially recover from the pandemic and to start growing again. We have standby facilities to make sure there's money that you can draw on in case any of your contract payments are delayed. And as we said, again, we work in partnership with you, and our team are always there. You have an investment officer who will be with you, and you can check in with them at any point. Thank you. Next slide, please.
Yeah, so how it works is to give you a bit of an overview of how long the process takes. I mean, the one thing to say is it always takes longer than you think. So, I mean, if you need money in the next month or two, it's going to be very challenging for us to proceed. But I would say if you need money within 6 months to 1 year, that's a more realistic, I would say, window. The reason for that is, it takes up to roughly 3 months from inquiry to assessment. I mean, it can be less, I want to reassure you in some cases, but often you would get in touch via email, you'll ask for some information. Obviously, you're speaking with other social investor. We check if you're eligible, we'll discuss with you your business model, and then, you decide to carry on with us. So then we undertake the due diligence, which at this point I should say is not particularly fun, but some people do like it. I mean, I would say everybody like it, not everybody find it fun, because it's here to make your organization better. So we act as a critical friend, effectively. We do ask you the kind of challenging question, because obviously we see a lot of charities, and that's, can be incredibly helpful, because it can highlight maybe some blind spot that you hadn't thought of. But again, we do it in a critical friend way. And we do that because then we write the application paper, and then we present to our investment committee on your behalf. So every month we would have an investment committee, and that independent committee will make that decision. So if you're approved, then there's a lot of legal aspects to deal with, apart from obviously agreeing and drawing the legal agreements. We need to undertake know your customers checks, so anti-money laundering checks. We need to verify as well your organization to make sure that it has charitable aims, because we hold Philanthropic Capital, so it's very important to us. And then you would maybe have some conditions as well to be able to draw down our loan. And then once you draw down, we have a repayment schedule agree. So this is to show you roughly how long it takes. It can be quicker, but we prefer to be conservative and upfront on the kind of time it can take to access a loan, because you have to remember it is, in most cases unsecured. So we really need to have confidence in your organization, the management, and the board. And then, of course, we provide post-investment support depending on the size of the loan. So that's why we're saying it is a partnership. You're going to be with us for 5-6 years on average, up to 10 years if you're having a 10-year loan. But we'll have kind of 3 months catch up with you to check that everything is going well. If obviously there's any issues, be honest, be upfront when you have concern about the future, when you're not sure you're going to be able to repay. We want for you to succeed. That's our ultimate aim. So we can consider that and signpost you where we can if we think you need external help, or we're aware of some program which might benefit the organization. And obviously we champion as much as possible your social impact by writing case studies and sharing your stories, obviously with your permission. Thank you. Next slide, please. And then, to finish off, maybe some tips to help you access social investment, and I guess to give you an insight of what we look at when we do an investment. So as mentioned earlier, social impact is absolutely central. So make sure that your impact stands out. We need to really understand why you need the loan, why that particular amount, and how will you repay it. And we need to make sure that both the management and the board are behind this and are agreeing to you taking on an investment. Financial, make sure that your accounts are filed on time on Companies House, but also you're able to produce up-to-date management accounts. The legal structure, obviously know what your legal structure is and the implication of that. And then we look a lot as well at governance. For us, it's very important. As I said, we're often taking providing unsecured loans. So for us, the security is very much, do we have faith in the governance? Do we have faith in the management team? and can we trust you to achieve what you said you would achieve. And if you need help, I'm sure Joe from Eastside will explain that shortly, but we can signpost you to the Reach Fund to help you access a grant of up to 15K and make sure you're what we call investment ready, but it's effectively strengthening your case and your organization in the long term to make sure that you can take on that investment. Thank you. So over to Kumar.
Yeah, hello everybody. Great to see you all. I'm just going to give an overview of social investment from a foundation perspective, a little bit about what Barrow Cadbury Trust does in social investments, and then an example of how we have collaborated as a group of foundations with a refugee charity called RefuAid. So just turning to foundations in general, there are I think about 40 trusts and foundations that have made or interested in social investments. And generally what they do is allocate a portion of their endowment portfolio to social investment, typically around 5%. And the social investment themes vary according to the social mission of each foundation, and they can be quite broad or they can be quite narrow. And the social investments also may have a geographical focus. So for example, the clues in the name, Trust for London, which is a very large foundation, focuses its investments in the Greater London area. I think what not differentiates foundations, what's common to all foundations is that impact comes first. So any financing is designed to maximize social impact rather than this is the financing that we can offer and the organization has to adapt to that financing structure. So it's very much impact first. And why is that? Or how are we able to do that? We're able to offer a broader range of investment types, from loans to bonds to equity to something that's in between equity and loans, which is quasi-equity. We can also offer lower interest rates, and we can also offer longer investment periods. And the reason that we can do that is that the social investment pot of money that we have doesn't have to be repaid, and it doesn't cost anything to us as a social investor. So that gives us and gives foundations in general a lot of flexibility in the type of financing that they can offer. Next slide, please. Just a little bit about what Barrow Cadbury Trust does in social investment. So we've been involved in social investing since 2010. We've allocated 5% of our endowment to social investment. And as you can see, we've agreed 40 social investments totaling 8.6 million in that period. And we currently have 21 investments with 3.4 million invested. I mean, our total social investment pot is about £5 million. And you'll see in terms of scale that we're much smaller than CAF Venturesome, for example, looking at the number of transactions that they've done and the amounts that they have lent. But then there are other foundations, which are much larger than us and have the capacity to do more and larger deals. Our objective in terms of being a social investor is to develop the market, to promote the market, and also to promote the social justice objectives of the trust. And as I alluded to in the earlier slide, each foundation has got its own social mission. And from a Barrow Cadbury perspective, on the grant side, we have sort of 3 program areas that we focus on, which is criminal justice, economic justice, and migration. And so our social investment portfolio has a bias towards those 3 sectors, but we're able to invest, and we do invest, in a whole range of sectors as well. But that gives you an idea of how each trust has a different social mission and potentially a different social investment objective. And more specifically, what we're trying to do is, as I mentioned earlier, drive social impact. So that is the primary objective. We secondly want to provide risk capital to test new models of investment. An early example of that would have been was the Peterborough social impact bond, which was the world's first social impact bond, and ourselves with a number of other foundations were investors in that, and that very much tested the model of social impact bonds, which are now called outcomes contracts. And thirdly, apologies for the jargon, catalyzed present and future funding. So really what we're hoping to do is that by investing in an organization alongside other foundations and perhaps taking the higher risk element of that investment, that we'll attract funding from other social investors and potentially the commercial investors as well. And then fourthly, if we're looking at a local project, we'll look at, we have a preference for investing in Birmingham and the West Midlands, which reflects the origins of the Cadbury business and the Cadbury family. And in terms of the amounts we can invest, between 50 and 250,000, and maturity dates between 3 and 10 years, although we can do longer than that, and we do as well. Next slide, please. So this is an example of a co-investment that we have made with RefuAid, which is a charity that helps retrain people who've received refugee status in the UK, and through their equal access loan program, they offer interest-free loans to refugees to retrain in the UK. So an example would be a Syrian dentist who has got refugee status in the UK, and that interest-free loan would pay for the re-accreditation training in the UK. And they've also signed up 92 language schools in the UK to provide free language tuition for their beneficiaries. And initially they received an interest-free loan from Joseph Rowntree and Comic Relief through their Red Shed social investment arm to fund the equal access loan program. And then we were approached by them, that's Barrow Cadbury and Esme, to help support their growth. Next slide, please. So what we were able to, basically, we discussed with RefuAid what their financing needs were based on the growth of the business, and what they said to us is that they wanted longer term funding, and they really wanted a revolving credit facility that would allow loans to be made, and as they were repaid, to be able to re-lend that money. So we worked with them to design a loan structure that would enable them to grow and re-lend money. So we were able to structure a 6-year loan, and for the first 4 years, that money could be drawn down, paid back, and re-lent to their beneficiaries. So we were really maximising that £300,000 investment, and that reflected the growth stage of the organisation. They really needed that recycling of capital, was very important to them, and we were able to structure that. And then in addition, Esme were able to provide a £55,000 grant to hire a placement lead, which was essentially a recruitment consultant. And because once the people had finished their training, they were ready to go into the job market. And what had previously happened was that RefuAid would be paying a recruitment consultant to to find them a role. So what we were able to do with the ESME grant was to enable RefuAid to get the recruitment fee for placing placing those people in jobs. So we were trying to help them develop a revenue model. And in terms of a quick note on impact, since the loan program started, they've made 260 loans, and half of those recipients have now got jobs, and the other half are still in training. And one, I think, startling statistic is that the average income of somebody before they took out the loan was just over £3,000, and the average income once they'd started employment was £33,000. And that's just picking one statistic, but I think that's quite remarkable. And I think sort of in conclusion, I would say that what this demonstrates is how foundations can work collaboratively together, and at the same time, to use a term that Anne-Hélène used earlier, to demonstrate the partnership between foundations, between the lender and between RefuAid. It was very much a partnership in creating this loan structure and the grant structure that would help them grow and become more sustainable. That's it from me.
Great, thanks, Kumar. On to the next slide. Great. So Eastside Primetimers, for sort of purposes of this webinar, are obviously a provider of investment support. However, I thought it was useful just to sort of give a summary of who we are. So we would see ourselves as a social business, and we have a consultancy business and a recruitment business. We also have a foundation, which is where our kind of social mission sits, which facilitates transfer of skills into the sector and also does some sort of pro bono work too with smaller organisations. We are motivated by wanting to play our part in sort of developing and maintaining a very strong social sector. And we do that through the projects across these different service areas. We've done over 1,500 consultancy and recruitment projects across the different service areas. And that includes work that's client funded or is funded by funds or is funded by government. So we've worked on some large programs such as the Youth Sector Development Fund, Big Potential, Health and Social Care Volunteering Fund, and we're also involved with the Lloyds Bank Foundation Enhance programme. We deliver the work with our network of consultants, and these individuals are handpicked by us because of the skills and experience that they have, but also really critically the understanding of the sector and an empathy for the sector, and also a sort of eagerness to continue that learning journey. So we don't see that we're coming to organisations with a kind of a fix. We're looking to learn and to take that learning onwards as well. So it's very much a two-way process. We think our sort of unique selling point is the high quality of the consultants that go and carry out our work. We talk about being very much more than the sum of our parts, and all that collective learning comes back into the centre and is brought to the new projects that we then go on to do. We are based across the UK and take projects across the UK, and our consultants are also located in a range of different areas. And so quite often we sort of pride ourselves on being able to match a project to somebody who is local and therefore understands the local context and environment to that project. And just to flag sort of a few newer services, our digital service and GDPR are recent additions to the sort of service provision that we have. Thanks. So in terms of social investment support, we're obviously focused on trying to unlock grants and loans to organisations and see our role as a kind of support provider within this. We sort of deliver a range of support across three main areas. The first one being sort of pre-investment support. So that might be support around doing feasibility studies to inform whether a project has legs and is potentially going to be investable. That can involve work around sort of testing the market, help with sort of budget forecasting and possible pricing, and again creating a sort of a headline business plan. We then work across the area obviously of sort of social investment readiness support, and we feel that we have a good range of support that sort of goes throughout the process. So it might be discussing an initial proposition to signposting or introducing organisations to different investors or funders, and then sort of going on the investment journey with them. We can support organisations through sort of trying to do that investment readiness piece that Anne-Helene talked about earlier. And one part, big part of that is perhaps using external funds with things like the Reach Fund. We, with the Reach Fund or client funded, we're able to sort of work with an organisation. So our work is basically around helping them demonstrate that they can repay the investment. They can be confident that they're, what they're applying for is fundable, be clear about what kind of level of funding they should be looking for, and also make sure that what they present to investors, that investors get sort of the information that they want in the format that they need it. Again, I think we talked a bit about being a critical friend from the other presenters. And again, we see our role again as a critical friend and about smoothing the relationships along as well. So we like to work collaboratively with the investor and the client organisation. We can help with structuring deals. So if there is an organisation looking for a larger investment, we can work across multiple lenders to help do the kind of due diligence around that. And we can also sort of, provide help with the post-investment piece as well. So working to support charities on their investment journey. So helping them once they've secured the investment to successfully follow through on the plans that they have. Next slide, please. So finally, I wanted just to talk a bit about the Reach Fund. We've mentioned it earlier. For us, it's a really important asset to the sector. It's a grant fund, for those that don't know, that is managed by SIB and funded from Access. And it's very much was focused on sort of helping the smaller organisations think about social investment as an area for them and giving them the sort of the tools that they need to be able to think about getting ready for investment. It allows organisations, therefore, to bring in an external resource to help perhaps with their capacity or their own sort of skill set to basically demonstrate their ability to the investor to take on loan finance. The available at the moment, I think, is between 5,000 and 15,000 as a grant, and it is applied for by the organisation. So it's non-repayable. It goes to the organisation to help the organisation pay for organisations like ourselves to help you sort of give the best account of yourselves in a sort of format that's required by the investor. The approach is done with the support of an access point investor, and there is a directory of those sort of access point investors that have been approved to work on the Reach Fund. So it's very much seen as a sort of again, the support is secured in advance. It's a sort of joint approach, and both ourselves and the investors will normally help you with the sort of application that you want to do. In order to apply, the website's there at the bottom. We are currently on our 28th Reach Fund project. Not all of them reach the point of investment because some perhaps through the investment journey, through doing the investment readiness support, recognise that actually it might not be the right option for them. The sort of things that we predominantly end up doing are obviously the business planning piece and the financial modelling, but again, looking at strong governance to give confidence to investors. There's also something about perhaps tracking outcomes, helping organisations articulate their social impact story, and also looking again to just check that the market is there for perhaps the growth that's been anticipated. We've worked across a range of organisations. So I think the smallest investment raise we've helped an organisation secure was 30,000, and the largest one is currently 1.5 million. So there's been a huge range that we've worked on, and there's just a few statistics there about the evaluation that Reach Fund have done so far to demonstrate the impact that they're having. Next slide, please. And this is just a bit of a testimonial really of another organisation that we worked with last year in collaboration with Venturesome. They came to us and we worked with them right from the outset. So we were involved with the conversation initially, flagging to them that there was the Reach Fund grant, introducing them to Venturesome, who we felt was a good fit, and then supporting them through getting the Reach Fund grant, and then with that money using it to help them with the business planning, etc., that was needed to make sure they covered everything that was required by Venturesome, and they were luckily secured a blended finance offer of 150,000 from Venturesome, which they have actually already, I think, repaid. So Great, thank you. I think the next thing we're going to do, and I don't know if he's joined us, is we were going to hear from Peter Merrifield from Support When It Matters, just as a sort of a more involved case study that we can talk through, and also he could perhaps explain to us about what it's like to be on that investment journey. Thanks. Have we got Peter?
Yes, I am here, Joe. Are you handing over to me?
Yeah, welcome, Peter. And yes, if you'd like to
Okay,
explore, that'd be great.
great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Joe. And thank you for inviting me just to say a few words. And thank you to both Eastside and CAF and Venturesome, because it's been a really positive experience. So I think for us as a small social enterprise, particularly targeted at a particular group of people, older men of colour in the criminal justice system, it can be quite a lonely and overlooked space, and therefore quite difficult in terms of building culturally informed services that are going to work with this particular group. So accessing funds to build our subject matter, our resources, our human resources, was critical for us to continue on the journey that we've embarked on since 2019. And so this opportunity to raise funds was a first for us. It was a significant, probably the largest amount of money we've had to raise. So for us, really quite big, 110K. And the experience for us was a very challenging is not the word I would use. It was a new experience. And there were points in the journey where I think, particularly around due diligence and understanding the range of information that would be required, the level and quality of information that needed to be pulled together, the formats and structures that investors need to see for good governance was new to us. And so there were times that it felt quite convoluted a bit, and it felt quite challenging. However, that said, it was a really good learning experience for us. That's what the first thing I'll say is it taught us through the unwavering, I would say, commitment that we got from Eastside and from CAF to actually make this work. There was a real belief and desire to make this happen. And so they held our hands and were very patient with us and very supportive in helping us collate the information, understand why we needed to gather certain things. And there's a particular area I would say was which stood out for me, and that was around the level of expertise around the financial modelling. I think, we had, dare I mention her name, we had Catherine, right, who was on it. She was on it virtually 24 hours a day, really responsive, really willing to come back, and sort of hold my hand through the request for further information. So that was excellent. And what that did for us, just to wrap up, I suppose, is that enabled us as a small organization with big ambitions and big opportunities to get the foundations in place for how we manage ourselves, both in terms of financial governance, but also governance around directors, skill set, job descriptions, roles and responsibilities. How do you create the foundation for good governance? And that is what I would say this experience done for my organization.
Great, thank you very much indeed. I think it always helps so much to hear from somebody that's actually gone through the process and can bring it to life and talk through, where the value is. So I really appreciate you joining us for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think now we were going to just sort of go through the question. I think Marina is very kindly going to kind of help us look at some of the questions that have come through on the Q&A and direct those to the relevant individuals. And
Can you hear me? Can you hear me, everyone?
Yes.
You can't see me because I'm the host. So we've got about 8 questions. This one, I think maybe you can answer, Jo. We had it in advance from Elizabeth Marshall, and she is here today. She's asking if faith organisations would be eligible if they are looking to set up spin-off social enterprise businesses. I don't know if that's for Jo or for which Jo or CAF or...
Well, Venturesome, I'm not sure, but yes, at Venturesome we can support faith-based organization, absolutely.
Okay, so the next question is from Peter Fee. If we are a charity, could we apply for funding through a subsidiary entity, for example, a social enterprise property company? And maybe that's for CAF and Kumar. I don't know if you have different answers.
Yes, we can look at it. I guess for us, we always prefer to invest at the parent charity organization, so the charity. But in some cases, and when the funding is clearly for the subsidiary and the income is clearly coming from the subsidiary, then yes, we can look at lending directly to that subsidiary.
Kumar, have you got anything to add to that?
I think that would apply. That would apply to us as well. That's fine.
Okay, so and then a question from Tom Floyd, and this is definitely for CAF Venturesome. You quoted 6.5% current interest rate. Is that variable, or how long has that rate applied?
So it's applied for a long time, I must say. I won't know all those tricks, but a long time. And yes, it's a fixed interest rate. I think you're all aware of the context. So there is a question mark at our end whether we'll have to revisit that, because it makes us uncomfortable when we are becoming cheaper than a bank. But yes, so far it's 6.5% interest rate, and it's fixed for the duration of the loan.
Okay, thank you. And another question for CAF Venturesome. Can the community-led housing fund be utilised for housing projects overseas?
So no, unfortunately, this is due to our funders for this fund. We can only support UK projects. However, as part of our development fund, we can support international projects as long as they have a registered entity in the UK. And we've helped, for instance, build so Ubuntu Busway, a house in, it's not a house, sorry, a school in South Africa. But we could consider housing project as well internationally, as long as they have a UK entity.
Thank you. So this one, anonymous attendee, so I think this is for everybody. Where's the best place to go? Have you got any advice on where to find out more about social investment processes generally and how they work in practice?
So should I just quickly answer that one? I hope that this webinar has explained the social investment process and how it works in practice, because that's the intention, and we will certainly follow up with our slides. But as we said earlier as well, go to Good Finance, search Good Finance. They are a directory that hold information on all the social investors in the UK. And that would certainly, and there's lots of videos about demystifying, jargon busting. Look, there's so much resources on that Good Finance website. Go there.
Just to say, at Eastside, we're really happy to have a conversation with individuals who are interested in understanding a bit more about the process as well, coming at it from quite a neutral point of view. And again, we have a number of different relationships with different investors, so we're able to kind of point you in the direction of those that we think are suitable, and could perhaps unpick some of that journey a little bit, what it's like to go through in reality.
Right, so next question from Richard Morris, and I think this is probably for CAF Venturesome and also for Kumar from Barrow Cadbury. How would you describe the variation of relationships between funders and fundees, purely focused on management of the investment through to also helping with connections to prospective partners, suppliers, etc.? I ask because I think there are great opportunities for the wider approach, but I've not seen it in action yet. Thoughts? You're all thinking.
Kumar is still thinking. Okay, I'm happy to address this. I would say it's I mean, obviously it's variable, and it's also how much you ask for our support as well. We do, as flagged, I mean, we do have quarterly catch-up with you, so we kind of check where you are, what your what your status are. If we can, we signpost you when we're aware of grant funding programs which are relevant in your area. We would definitely signpost you. We sometimes as well, because obviously we have a wide portfolio and we think some organization could really benefit in working together in terms of, maybe social impact measurement or other areas. We create these connections. So I would say we do it on a maybe ad hoc basis, more than I guess a comprehensive approach. But that's us. We have 120 organizations in our portfolio, so rather large portfolio. So we try as much as we can to make this connection. But to be fair, it is variable depending on the need of the organization, and also on what we can offer.
Kumar, have you got anything to add?
I just got a sign that my internet connection was unstable, so hopefully you can hear me. I've been thinking about this question since I saw it, and I think the answer is that there's definitely perhaps more that we can do in that area, but I sort of feel that maybe perhaps the onus is on the investee to ask us if they have an issue, I think, or a question, or do we have contacts. I think it's helpful in our sectors where we're looking at criminal justice, refugee sector, or the migration sector, and economic justice, where we have good contacts on our grant side. So we have, very well plugged in to various organizations within those sectors, but it's not it's more linked to, are there opportunities for grant funding and things like that, rather than can you recommend a supplier, for example. And I think there's definitely more that we can do in that area, because certainly in our own, as a trust, we're always looking to use suppliers that are social enterprises, etc. So I think in the same way, that's something that we could expand. But I think the focus is very much on the financial support, the grant support, etc., rather than something broader. But I think it's food for thought, and something that we should think about, and perhaps proactively ask organizations and say, look, if you ever, if you have a question that's not purely finance related, pass it by us. And I think maybe that's something that we could, say that we're open to that.
Thanks, Kumar. So this question is from Jeff Berridge, and I'm not sure who to ask, because he says, asks if you need a banking license to lend money.
Yeah, I think I understand the question, but if I don't, please, Jeff, ping another question. So we're not regulated, so we're not a bank. Within CAF, we have CAF Bank, which is a regulated bank. So I guess your question is, no, we're not regulated, and we are lending money. We are accountable to our funders who have lent their capital to us. It's not a donation, we have to return it. So this is where the accountability obviously is there. And then obviously we need to operate within, the wider legal framework of the UK in terms of checking for anti-money laundering check, financial crime, making sure that, because we hold philanthropic capital, it is for charitable purposes, etc. So we are accountable, but we're not regulated as a bank.
And the same for us. We're not regulated. Previous organization I worked for was regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority, and therefore we needed to have there's a company-wide registration, but also we had to be registered as individuals to be deemed to be competent to perform that investment manager role. But within the foundation world, we're not subject to that regulation.
And there is one question for Peter about why did he choose to go for a social investment blended finance mix rather than a grant? So I guess we'll have to, unless you can answer for him, Joe, or we can ask him afterwards.
I think it felt like because he wanted to invest in sort of a layer of I suppose a bit of the infrastructure to grow, it felt like that was a more suitable option. He was obviously originally going for a loan, but it was when we had the initial conversation with Venturesome that, you know, they were clear because he's a fairly young organization with a fairly limited turnover, that a blended financing would be the best option for him, and would mitigate some of the risk in terms for Venturesome and for himself. And so it was just sort of seen as the most suitable option.
Thank you. Right, so I've got a couple more questions that are coming in. Do large foundations working across similar themes meet regularly to connect, to look at the overall impact that's being made on any given area? Sort of a question of interest. I don't know, maybe one for you, Kumar.
Yeah. So, I mean, we meet quite regularly in different forums, but I'd say we don't. So where we co-invest, obviously we you know, have very close collaboration, but I would say there isn't a general you know, there isn't we don't meet with other foundations on, you know, sort of what's happening in the criminal justice field, but that's probably because there aren't that many social investors from the foundation side that actually are focused on criminal justice in particular. But, you know, we'll talk to foundations where we know that they've made a social investment in a particular, you know, in a criminal justice area, and if we're looking to do something in that area as well, we may talk to them, but it's not a there isn't a general forum for that. But what, I mean, maybe of interest, you know, there's one area where foundations are collaborating, you know, and that's very much on the area of equity, diversity and inclusion, where as foundations we are working together to look at what we're doing in that area, how we can improve what we're doing, how we can measure and report on what we're doing. So that's one area where we are collaborating, as we see that as a really important area where foundations and social investors need to do more.
Has anyone else got anything to add to that, Kumar's answer?
No, Mike issue. No, I agree with that. I'll just say, yes, there is a network of foundation where we meet regularly and discuss around social investment, and sometimes discuss, you know, the learnings, and organize sometimes thematic roundtable. I know we had on the heritage and cultural roundtable. So I'm sure there'll be appetite to do more. I would say if you want to look at the wider kind of social investment space, Big Society Capital, they hold a lot of data about where investment have been made across the sector. It's a bit more quantitative, but yeah, if you're interested in that, you can have a look.
Thank you. And our last question from Peter Fee. Oh no, he's two questions. How much work are you doing in Scotland and with UK-wide charities?
I can just quickly answer from our point of view. Around the social investment space funded from Reach Fund, it won't be any, because Reach Fund is England-wide, which I should have probably said before. That said, we do, with our generic sort of products and services, we are covering across the UK. We were typically, I suppose, England focused for some time, and we are now starting to pick up projects, yeah, north of the border and also into Wales and Northern Ireland. But it's probably still an area for growth, but definite interest on our side.
And another comment from Peter Fee about Peter from Swim, and Nadia's question is, his perspective is, from what he's heard, it's about the contact, the support and the advice that was available to Peter, and probably why he would consider using that route, because it helps give comfort in terms of continuity as well. So that was his comment.
Great.
So I think we've, oh no.
Yeah,
we're just getting thank yous now. So Actually, one thing I did want to say, I've had a couple of people asking about the slides. So anyone who has registered and attended, or registered and not attended, will get an email before the end of this week, hopefully, with a link to watch the recording and download the slides, which they're welcome to pass on to anyone else who they think might be interested.
Great, thank you. I was just going to say that. Sorry, Anne-Helen.
No, sorry, just it was to add briefly on the question. I mean, grants often have a restricted purpose, when with a loan it's much more flexible. I guess that's another reason why Peter chose a loan, because you don't have the restriction that it has to be used for this very narrow purpose and is restricted. This is effectively unrestricted money.
As I say, and he was, I know one of the motivations was again around there was no sort of penalty, particularly if he was able to repay early. So that also helped with the concern about risk. So I just wrap up then by sort of thanking everybody that did attend the session. It was great to have such great take up, and also to thank the speakers who I think did an absolutely brilliant job. It was really interesting, and just to reiterate that we will be sharing the slide and the video to everybody after the session. And please do get in touch with any of us if there's something you would like to have a conversation about. We're always keen to have conversations. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.